And for making it down here in this weather tonight as well. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do you have your roll calls? Want me to just do this first? No, go.
Okay.
If you're ready.
Sorry. Eva Henry. Here. Bill Holland.
Here.
Elise Johns. Here. Dennis Harward. Tim Mock. Tom Hayden. Chrissy Faganello.
She's here.
Chris Nevitt. Robin Kniech. Here. Roger Partridge. Here. Gail Watson. Connie McLean. Oops. Don Rozier, Casey Ty, Bob Pfeiffer.
Here.
Bob Roth.
Here.
Sue Horn. Here. David Spellman. Suzanne Jones.
Here.
Ann Justin. Rick Pilgrim. Lynn Baca. Cynthia Martinez. George Teal.
Here.
Kathy Noon. Here. Ron Ingalls. Doug Tisdale.
Here.
Gail Christie. Jim Benson. Rick Teeter. Charles Sigmund, Todd Riddle, Lori Keegan, Randy Penn, Joe Jefferson, Dan Woog.
Here.
Joyce Thomas. Here. George Heath, Samantha Meering, Lisa Jones, Laura Brown, Henry Ergot, Paula Bovo, Doris Rigoni, Saoirse Carys-Graves, Ron Rakowski.
Here.
Mike Hillman, Brad Weasley, Stacy Luberger, Tom Quinn,
Here.
Jerry Bean, Bill Cernanek,
Present.
Jackie Millay. Here. Gabe Santos.
Here.
Ashley Stolzman. Here. John O'Brien, Connie Sullivan, Colleen Whitlow, Richard Kramer, Deborah Jerome, Sean Foray, Chris Larson, Joe Gearlock, Joyce Downing, John Dyack, Gary Howard, Landau De Laguna, Rita Dozel. Here. Val Vigil, Herb Atchison, Joyce J. Here. Doug Young, Deborah Perkins Smith. Here. Simon Tafoya, Bill Van Meter.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Wonderful. We have a quorum, and also I would like everyone to say hello to Rita Dozel from the town of Superior, who is our new board member. So welcome, Rita, and thanks for coming down here tonight. And please tell Deborah we miss her.
Yes. Well, she's Mayor Pro Tem now. So
Please tell Mayor Pro Tem she's busy. All right. Okay, moving on. I've had some requests to make some amendments to the agenda. So I am going to look for a motion from Mayor Tisdale.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I would like to move to approve the agenda with the following two changes. First, as to agenda item number 10, that be changed from an action item to a discussion item for reasons that I'll enumerate in a moment, and that we add an agenda item under action agenda 11A, and that be an action item to address the Kipling multi-use trail project in Wheat Ridge. And speaking to the motion, if I may, the discussion item for the tip has been recommended by several members in light of new information that has just been received yet today, and consistent with our policy of allowing members to have an opportunity for their staffs to review those new data when they come in, we would ask that the matter be a discussion item now with a view toward having an action item in December.
I would like to add a friendly amendment that I learned after sitting down. We would like to move number 13, informational items, which we usually don't present at the board, but Rich Morrow is going to give us an overview of our draft
legislation policy for 2015. So if the board is so willing, we would also move that to the end of our action agenda item, or at the top of our informational briefings, however we want to characterize that. Would you accept that amendment?
Friendly amendment accepted.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Abstained, excuse me. Motion carries. Okay, report of the chair.
Yeah.
I have a lot to talk to you guys about. I'm going to try and keep it quick, though.
Madam Chair, a point of order from
Yes, sir.
Mayor Noon.
Don't we also need to move 8, the 2015 budget, out of consent?
Thank you, Mayor Noon. Pardon?
We can do that when we get to the consent.
Oh,
agenda.
we'll do
Okay,
that.
I
We'll
didn't know
do
if we
that
wanted
then.
to do it. We
We'll
can do
do
it
that
then.
then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Noon. All right, I'm going to go back to my report of the chair. If you'll review in attachment A, we're looking for solicitations for nominations for the John V. Christensen Memorial Award. It's self-explanatory, but please take a look at it, and if you have someone in mind that you think would be worthy of this, and it is a great honor. I think it's the highest award kind of given at DRCOG, so if please send in nominations, excuse me, for that. There's also in attachment B, we're going to start solicitation for nominations for local government awards. So if you would also please review that, and if you are so inclined, nominate yourself or submit someone. The administrative committee appointments to the nominating committee. So as we typically do this time of year, I will be, the administration committee just appointed Kathy Noon and Roger Partridge to the nominating committee. This is an FYI later in the agenda. This body will be appointing 2 people to the nominating committee. If you are interested in serving or would like to nominate one of your fellow board members, please think about that and be willing to do so later in the discussion. If you are interested in serving as a board officer, the application, or serving on the administration committee, the applications for that are due November 28th. Connie does have some of the applications here tonight if you'd like to take one and fill it out. I would encourage everyone to consider serving. Even though it seems like we've been dropping like flies lately, we, you know, it really is an honor and a privilege to be able to serve on the executive committee for this group, so, and the admin committee as well. I would like to actually poll the group now. It does not look like we will be having an MVIC meeting in December, but we will be having a board meeting December 17th. We are considering trying to have an open house kind of social gathering either prior to or just at the conclusion of our December board meeting. By a show of hands, who would be interested in that happening before about the 4 o'clock time frame? So, social, or actually, let me go with this. Is anybody interested in a 4 o'clock board meeting with having the social hours at the end of that? Would that work for people in the room? And can I get a show of hands if we could start our board meeting at 4 o'clock on the 17th? Does that work? Okay. And is there any, okay, now let me try the other way too. Does anybody want to do social at 4 and then just normal board meeting and then be done? Okay, I like a party, people, so I'm going with a 4 o'clock start, so please put that on your calendars. We're going to start our board meeting at 4 o'clock on December 17th. Let's see. Oh, and one other thing. I have had the honor and privilege of representing DRCOG, which is why I was not at MVIC last week, at 2 SCI conferences, one in Oakland and one in Salt Lake City. And it gave me a better opportunity to see the tremendous work being done by the DRCOG staff. And as frustrating as it can be sometimes sitting at the board table working through some issues, I have to let you know that the staff that we have working at DRCOG and representing us in the greater community of COGS is so talented and so really well respected, and it's really was once they heard I was from the Denver region and part of the DRCOG organization, you know, my status went up by leaps and bounds, and I think it's a testament to the work that's done at this board table and also done by our staff in cooperation with the other COGs in the area. We will be getting more information on the SCI work. That is going to be, a briefing on that is going to be part of our December board meeting, and there have been 2 ad hoc committee groups meeting on economic vitality and housing, and I'd like to, if you're participating in either of those, would you please raise your hand? I'd like your fellow board members to acknowledge your work on that. These people are meeting above and beyond, guys. They're down here, I don't know, 3-4 times a week, it seems like, and it's a lot of work by your fellow board members and by staff. So I know I'm looking forward to that information being presented to all of you and getting your feedback on that great work that's been going on. And I think that's it for me. So I am going to now turn this over to Flo Rotana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I likewise have a lot of things to talk to you about tonight. Most importantly is an update on Jennifer and how she's doing. She did have surgery on Halloween. She's doing very well after surgery, and we'll be seeing her doctor Tuesday morning. And it's her goal on Tuesday morning to convince her doctor to release her to come back to work on Wednesday. My money's on Jennifer, so I'm hoping to see her back here Wednesday morning. But you know, if her doctor doesn't give her the okay, we'll see her after Thanksgiving. But you know, she sounds great. She sounds bored, so she's pretty highly motivated to come back to work, and you will be seeing her sitting in this seat in December. So that's the good news. The December board, we have already set that. We will not have an admin committee meeting for December. We cracked the whip and made them do all the hard work tonight in advance of not having an admin meeting next month. So you can cancel that. At your place, there are some flyers, and so February 27th and 28th, it's a save the date. We're going to be going up north. It's the Embassy Suites. I think I said it was someplace else. It's the Embassy Suites in Loveland. That's right off of I-25, next to the Budweiser Event Center, which is the Larimer County Fairgrounds. And that will be our board workshop. This is our annual board workshop. Also, save.
Excuse me.
I don't know yet.
Okay.
We want it to be.
We are trying to negotiate an early start. Yeah. But the good news is Embassy Suites has a happy hour starting at 5 o'clock with
Free beer.
free booze and hors d'oeuvres. So hey, you know, just saying. Get there early. Also, you open the nominations for the John V. Christensen Award and our Local Governments Award. This is a big hairy deal this year because DRCOG turned 60, and so this will be our annual celebration. It is scheduled for April 22nd. It will be at the Sewell Ballroom at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts, and that will be a good time had by all. Nominations for those awards are due by Friday, January 4th. The close of business, and if you have any questions, you can talk to Rich Morrow or Brad Calvert about the nominations and the qualifications. They will also be available on the website, so they will be posted there as well on that. Last Thursday and Friday I was in Washington, D.C. The National Association of Regional Councils convened a forum for I call them the big COGs. These are the large metropolitan councils of governments and MPOs. That is a subset of the National Association of Regional Councils. And we all got together to talk about common issues and transportation funding and working together in some interesting ways, perhaps on modeling technologies and that type of thing. So it was a highly productive meeting. There is some really highly creative people at the helm in the other councils of governments, and it was clear that this group, as an affinity group, I think we were adding up the numbers, and if we can get Dallas to join us and LA to join us, we will have, you know, the lion's share of the population in the country, and tend to work very hard with USDOT on funding issues and the upcoming MAP 21 reauthorization. So it was a very productive trip back to Washington, D.C. I will be gone. It's a good thing we're not doing MVIC because I won't be here the first week in December because I'll be back in D.C. This time for the HUD convening. This will be the last convening that HUD does. This will be the closeout event for all of the Sustainable Communities grantees in this round. And so we will be learning how to close out all the paperwork and dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure all the work plans are done and that type of thing. But also have a conversation about what's next. You know, how do we move to implementation and where do we go from here? And is there a next step to be considered? So that should be an interesting meeting in December in Washington, D.C. as well. And I think that covers it for me. Oh, one note I should make, if there is a stray flyer at your seat about a board orientation on December the 18th, please disregard that. We have pulled that off the table. We are going to move it up into January to accommodate any new board members that will be seated in January, and thought that it was not in everybody's best interest to run one in December and another one in January. So we're just going to move that into into January. So Rita, being new, hang with us for a while. We'll get you up to speed at that upcoming meeting, and I will be calling you. Jennifer will be calling you. We'll set
I might call
time to
you.
meet.
Okay. We might
So-
have Ashley call you.
So there'll be no short of attention from DRCOG. So I think that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay. I'm going to move on to our public comment. Up to 45 minutes is allocated at this time for public comment. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. If there are additional requests from the public to address the board, time will be allocated at the end of this meeting to complete public comment. I will request that there be no public comment on issues for which a prior public hearing has been held before the board. Consent and action items will begin immediately after the last speaker. Is there any public comment this evening? Okay, I'm going to close the period for comment. I'm going to move to the consent agenda, and I'm going to look for a motion from Mayor Noon.
Madam Chair, I move to approve consent agenda with the removal of the approval of the 2015 budget for separate action immediately following the approval of the minutes.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda now, the revised consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? Oh, I can't. Somebody else seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Just trying to keep us moving along. Opposed? Abstained. Okay. We have one remaining item on the 2015 budget. May I have a motion regarding that item?
Madam Chair, I would move to approve the 2015 budget with 2 amendments to the budget. I apologize, I need to pull out my copy to recite it correctly. Specifically, you will note that there is on the 2015 budget an item relative under revenue relative to member dues. You will see that the proposed budget as submitted shows that number at $1,350,400. My motion is to amend that to the 2014 budget number, which is $1,287,400, which is a delta of approximately $63,000, and that the expenditures item under personnel in the amount of $10,181,511 be reduced by that delta as described above of approximately $63,000, and that other changes as necessary to the totals be made throughout. And if I may speak to the motion after I receive a second.
Please speak to the motion.
Thank you. The recommendation was made at the admin committee that because the governance committee is in the process of reviewing the dues structure and the issue of dues at this time, that it might be appropriate to forego the return to the formula. Very briefly put, the 2013 actual and 2014 budget that you see before you reflect the $1,287,000. That's an artificial number. There is a formula that the board approved a number of years ago relative to the calculation of dues, and it's based upon, if you look at the footnote, various, I'm sorry, it's on the footnote on the other document that I have. I apologize. There is a formula that calculates size of city, the assessed valuation of property and so forth, and from that formula is derived the actual dues for each city. 5 years ago, the board, through the administrative committee recommendation, froze the dues because of the economic constraints that many people were feeling at that time. And that number has been frozen since then. So it's been artificially held in place as opposed to adjusting each year based upon these new numbers coming in. The recommendation by staff was to go ahead and unfreeze that now and simply apply the formula that the board had previously approved. Comment was made that since we're in the process of looking at this question through the governance committee, wouldn't it be appropriate simply to carry forward that same frozen number, and then when the governance committee provides a final report to this body, we could take whatever action might be appropriate at that time and create an amendment to the budget at that time. If we do that, however, you'll note that there is this roughly $63,000 delta that we have to account for. Well, it turns out, relative to our medical insurance premiums and our dental insurance premiums, that Roxy, where's Roxy? She needs to stand up and take a bow. She needs to stand up and take a bow because she was able to negotiate significantly reduced premiums. If you look at the budget letter on page 2 of that letter, it talks about a 25% increase for medical insurance. Roxy kept it down to, I believe, 9.8% increase as opposed to 25%. Therefore, there is more than enough, roughly $134,000 in savings on medical and approximately $5,000 savings in dental to cover that delta that I've described of the $63,000 that the dues increase would do. So we just simply change those numbers. We have a balanced budget, presumably even have perhaps some factor of additional funds in there, but we give ourselves the freedom to address this issue through the governance committee process that we set up a number of months ago. And for that reason, I would urge you all to approve the motion with this revised budget.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. I was notified after I began that I was remiss in announcing our senator-elect, who it's my understanding is in the back of the room, Beth Martinez-Humenick. Will you please? Oh, I didn't even see you. Okay, I apologize, and congratulations to you, Senator-elect. So a cautionary tale for the rest of us. There's been, since I've been on DRCOG board, there have been a number of people who I've been served as fellow board members with who have then gone on to bigger and better things at the state legislature. So congratulations, and be careful. Who knows who it may be next sitting here. So the hard work here pays off. Okay, with that, I'm going to move on to our action agenda. Item number 9, move to appoint 2 members to the nominating committee. Flo.
Well, this is the formal process that the board goes through every year at this time. We do have a nominating committee who will be considering those individuals who are willing to step forward and submit their names for service as officers of the DRCOG board. The only officer who we know will be returning is our illustrious chair, and so the current slate of officers need to also resubmit their names for consideration at this time. Included in that are also the representatives from this board to the admin committee, and they are appointed to serve on the admin committee for the period of a year. So for those members of the admin committee who serve as board representatives, if you're interested in continuing your service, you will also need to submit your name for that. And those self-nominations, Connie has some papers here this evening available for you. Those are due by November the 28th. As is part of our Articles of Incorporation, the prescribed process is that the admin committee selects 2 members of the nominating committee, the board selects 2 members of the nominating committee, and the chair may appoint 2 members of the nominating committee. The admin committee this evening, in its earlier actions, have appointed Mayor Noon from Centennial and Commissioner Partridge from Douglas County to be its representatives to the nominating committee. So, Madam Chair, I will return it to you.
So I'm going to open the floor for nominations and self-nomination. Or Mayor Rakowski.
I nominate Commissioner Bill Holland from Arapahoe County.
And I would like to nominate Councilmember George Teal from Castle Rock.
Suzanne.
I wanted to throw my name in the hat just for a little geographic diversity.
Gabe.
I'd like to throw my hat in the ring. Gabe Santos from Longmont.
Bob Pfeiffer.
I'll throw my name in as well.
And Sue.
I wanted to nominate Chris Nevitt.
I know. She got permission. She got permission. Is there anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close the nominations. Going once, going twice. Okay. Connie is distributing ballots, very official ballots. If you would please write down 2 names. Would anyone like a review of the candidates? Yes, please? Okay. If you're in the room and you have been selected to be a candidate, would you please just stand up and say your name? Go ahead, Gabe, please start. I'm going to say Chris, Suzanne, I'm sorry. And then Chris Nevitt, Denver. So if everyone would please submit their 2. Do I get to vote?
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't give you one.
Can I just, here, oh, here, okay. You can. You could even, no, you can't. Oh, you can't.
Here you go.
Okay.
Sorry. It's not really secret. I will tell them at the end if they all want to know what the votes were.
If you're done voting, pass your ballots this way and we'll collect them up here.
Hey, here.
What's that? There you go. All right. Deal.
Roger, he'll grab them for you.
I don't know yet.
And I will just let you know, unless someone approaches me on the side, but I'm going to pick my 2 appointments will be from the list of candidates that are here that are not selected. So if there's anybody else who would like to contact me at the end privately, please feel free to do so, but that's how I'm going to make my selection. I don't have to draft anyone this time. I appreciate that. Have all the ballots been turned in? All of the official ballots? You thought you were finished voting last Tuesday. Okay. All right. Hopefully, everyone will be happy at the end of tonight. All right, I'm going to move on now to our next action item. Because item number 10 has been moved to a briefing discussion, I'm going to skip that right now and move on to, well, actually, yeah, let's just move on. Let's just move on to move to adopt item number, what was 11, move to adopt a resolution approving the DRCOG 2014 baseline review and determination report. I believe, are we doing that first? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Matthew Helfant, Senior Transit Planner. State Senate Bill 208 requires DRCOG to review Fast Track's plan changes proposed by RTD. The review criteria is shown here. This review was previously conducted annually. However, last year the DRCOG board changed the timing but not the scope of the Fast Track's review process to occur as needed. RTD was required to submit a Fast Track's plan baseline report to serve as a basis for identifying future changes. The baseline report contains 2 substantive changes from the assumptions in the previous DRCOG review and determination. First, completion of the Southeast Extension moved up to 2019. This is reflected in the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan. And second, the first phase Northwest Rail Line will not stop at 41st and Fox or Pecos Junction stations that are shared with the Gold Line. However, RTD will reevaluate this this operational change in 2017, 1 year after the opening. Both changes are reflected in the DRCOG model, and staff concludes that these changes do not require Senate Bill 208 action. The TAC committee concurred with our assessment, and staff requests approval of the DRCOG 2014 Baseline Review and Determination Report. Be happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Robin.
Just an informational question about the elimination of the 41st and Fox stop. So the notes in the packet mentioned that it was due to the P3 agreement, but then it also mentioned that it can be reevaluated. So I'm kind of confused about is it a contractual obligation or expectation, or is it something that really, to the extent that development around that station, and I can't speak for Adams County about the Pecos station, but to the extent that demand emerges and, you know, what are we able to revisit or are we not?
Well,
Thanks.
Bill Van Meter is probably the perfect person to take this question.
I'll take a stab at it. Yeah, so it is how the contract with DTP, the our Eagle P3 concessionaire, was crafted. It did not include stops on the Northwest Corridor, our contract with them. So we want to open with operations as articulated in the contract. That does not mean we can't amend the contract were the need or desire arise, which would then allow us to accommodate that. It would come at presumably some cost to RTD, but also, and this is all speculation on my part, presumably not all that much of an additional cost, and would be something that we would be able to accommodate if and when that requirement arises.
Suzanne.
If I remember my notes correctly, TAC said review like really quickly. So I'm curious whether we're accommodating that recommendation in our report here, and how quickly is quickly. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Yeah.
Well, I think the motion as stated and the information that's contained in the packet about what the recommendation of TAC was, they were okay with what was being proposed by RTD with regards to evaluating it again after 1 year service. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? See, yes, Beth. Senator-elect.
Thank you.
I don't get to say that very often from up here, so I'm going to.
I just wanted to, even though this isn't part of the two, just wanted to remind everybody that in the notes that the completion of the Metro North line is beyond 2040 and that it's not anticipated to be completed during the 2040 timeframe. So just as a reminder to the board, RTD has until December 21st of 2015 to extend our RP's contract to build from 124th to the end of line for the North Line, and which really closely corresponds with the time period for the record of decision shelf life of 5 years that is being rescinded by the FTA. So the hope is that they're going to be able to find money and amend the plan again next year.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to look for a motion. Motion and a second. Did you know? Who Robin moved. Who was the second? Joyce. Any discussion? No. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, the motion carries. At this point, we are going to move on to our amended agenda, and I am going to ask Mayor Jay to speak, to kind of open the discussion and let us know what the concern is. And if you want to stay there, you want to come up here, whatever you're comfortable doing.
I can stay here. In October, the city of Wheat Ridge was notified we had lost our TIP funding regarding a critical north-south multimodal trail adjacent to Kipling, a project that connects both Lakewood and Arvada. It actually runs pretty close to the Kipling, the proposed to be built Kipling commuter rail station as well. We've already spent quite a bit of money, close to $2 million in city and federal funds have been spent on this project, and there are safety factors now that we're sort of halfway into it. I have got with me, would this be time to do our a little presentation?
Of course, yes,
right.
Please.
We do have our Public Works Director, Scott Brink. He is going to give us a little beginning, and we'll have a 7-slide presentation, not to take over 30 minutes or an hour. Is that correct? Joking. Joking.
Oh. Okay.
Not told that it would be.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Jay. Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the board. We really appreciate you adding this to the agenda tonight, and especially a night like it is tonight outside. And one more thing on the agenda isn't actually all that great a thing, so really appreciate that. But I'm Scott Brink, the Director of Public Works with the City of Wheat Ridge. With me here tonight, I have Mark Westberg, our project manager, project engineer for the Kipling multi-use trail project. And the reason we're here tonight is we have a project very important to the community, as Mayor Jay alluded to. It's basically shovel ready, ready to go out for bid. We've gone through the review process, have received all the clearances. The problem is our construction funding, our federal funding, got pulled on October 1st because we missed the deadline for having the final clearances. And we were aware of this deadline. We hit the project hard. We thought we were going to get there in time, and we didn't. So we take full responsibility for that, and I'm not here to offer excuses. But we are in a bit of a bind. We have a project it's essentially been underway. We started utility work, and I'm going to have Mark run through a brief little PowerPoint, kind of give you a background of the project and where we are. But we're in a bind in that the project is basically stopped dead in its tracks, and we have no money, and the schedule's unknown. So since October 1st, we've met with CDOT, DRCOG staff. They've been great, real helpful, just kind of walking through how this whole process works. It's been an education for me, for all of us, and that leads us to tonight. And what we're looking for from the board is just any guidance, assistance, action, whatever your choosing might be tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark.
We may have undersold a little bit. We have 9 slides, but I do talk really fast. So if I do talk too fast, let me know and I'll slow down. That generally isn't a concern. Most people like it that I talk fast at these kinds of things. So if we can go to the first slide, and these are, sorry, I thought I was going to run this so they're kind of animated. I'm a little bit of a control freak. So the big thing is this project's on a couple of adopted bike ped master plans. The city's plan, it's our #1 priority route. It closes the gaps with some existing trail system we have. It connects a couple of parks. It connects a couple of open spaces, the school, 2 schools, and our rec center, and it connects to the Clear Creek Regional Trail. It gets all that stuff down to the Clear Creek Regional Trail. The DRCOG bike ped master plan, when they were working on that, they worked on that just a year or so after we got ours completed. It actually was their primary north-south route through what they called the Plains area. I know that those of you in Aurora don't think that we have plains over here, but DRCOG has a really mountainous spot, so they think of that as the plains. It's a really critical north-south link between Lakewood and Arvada. With the existing trails that are connected there, you can go all the way from 26 up to I-70 once we get these few missing links connected. And the big thing is, the benefit is it's our multimodal access that does all this stuff. I'm not going to say it because I'll mess it up saying it, but you guys can read what's up there. It's a real public safety thing for us. We have a lot of people walking along Kipling now, and it's just sort of dirt paths alongside a 40-mile-an-hour road, which nobody drives 40 miles an hour. This is where it's located. For those of you that aren't familiar with our little town, Lakewood's on the south end and Arvada's up on the north end. The Gold Line Kipling Ridge Station is shown there. And these are sort of the missing pieces there in the middle of the Clear Creek. It runs right across the middle of it. We've got all the green spaces, parks. The big green space at the bottom is the Crown Hill open space that Jefferson County manages. And so it really provides a critical link to all these neighborhoods that are in that area to those facilities. And really the project scope, I mentioned missing links. These are all the different links we've got, plus we're getting across Clear Creek with a new pedestrian bridge. There's not a great ped access. I think there's a 3-foot or 2-foot wide thing on either side of the Kipling Bridge. I'm kind of a wide body. I wouldn't walk across it. I'd get clipped by mirrors. So we think we're closing some really good links. We've got a lot of really good stuff planned. We're undergrounding the utilities along the residential portion, which is that southern portion from 32nd to 35th. We're getting ped lights and street lights added. The Kipling is very underlit at this point. We're upgrading all the ramps that we're touching, upgrading those to meet the current ADA standards. We're putting benches, bike racks, and bike shelters in. We're actually adding a bike shelter at one of our parks and then adding some bike racks down our Clear Creek trailhead. Our budget, Scott mentioned this, we spent almost $500,000 so far on design funds. A little over half of that's federal, about $200,000 of that's city. We bought the right-of-way with all city money. We just sort of forgot to put that in our original application. That was an oops on our part, so we've sort of ponied up and bought all the right-of-way with our money. The construction funds to date's an estimate. We haven't gotten the final bill from Excel. That was their cost to underground that quarter-mile section of their lines. And then our future construction funds are shown there. We're on tap to spend a little over $600,000 with almost $2.2 million from the federal government. Okay. And then here's where we are. Scott had mentioned this. We've got all of our CDOT clearances. We just got our environmental clearance in the last week or so. The right-of-way's all been purchased. It's ready to go. The Excel undergrounding is completed. The CenturyLink and the Comcast are pending. We can't complete those undergroundings until we get some earthwork done in the area. So they're kind of on hold until we get in there. And that leads us to the safety issue. I don't know why it is, but when you take the power lines off the top of the poles and cut the poles off, suddenly the phone lines and the cable lines all sag dangerously low. I don't know how that happened, but it did. And then we allowed Excel to do some stuff in a city-owned detention pond because we thought we were going to be coming right back in and fixing it. And right now that pond is holding water. So, oh, there's the 2 pictures. So sorry, can you go back one? We have pretty pictures. Scott took these. So the pond's holding water, and on the left one, you can see on the bottom right of that, you see the stop sign that's sitting there. And I can't quite reach the tops of the stop signs, but you can see just how low those power lines are. When this all sort of came about, we got several calls from residents that said it looks like the trash trucks are hitting the lines as they go under them. They're just that close. So we're kind of in a tough situation there. And then Scott's going to talk about the city hardships.
Yeah, I'll just wrap this presentation up real quick. Some of the tough issues we're dealing with now as a result of losing the federal funds. As Mark mentioned, we've expended almost $2 million in city funds so far. Another issue problem we discovered, in addition to losing the construction funds, is the way the policy is currently written. We would also lose the design funds, work that we've already completed to date, spent all the money on, and technically the way the policy is written is we'd have to reimburse that as well. So we'd like to see if there's something we can do about that. And that's not just a Wheat Ridge issue. We see that the way it's written is potentially a problem for other communities as well. The safety issues, we would like to keep going with the project, just as Mark mentioned, the drainage, the low power lines. We need to get that finished up, but we need a contractor on board to help do that. Another problem is we used one of our current TIP applications to throw our project back into the mix here and reapply for the federal funds. So we've already used up one of those applications that we would have loved to have used for another project. Construction delays going forward, even the way we see it now, best case scenario with some kind of funding restored, we're still delayed on our project probably at least a good year. And then just the whole public expectations of a project that everybody wants and expected that it would be under construction already. So we're dealing on from a public relations standpoint as well. Next slide, please. When we met with staff from DRCOG and CDOT, we kind of came up with all sorts of ideas or ways this could go. One of the things we talked about was, as I mentioned, we technically lose our design money too. So one of the things we talked about was perhaps revisiting the way the wording is, the policy wording on deadlines and when you lose funding for specific phases. In other words, if a project has already had a phase completed, an earlier phase, whether that's design or environmental or whatever, and you hit a snag later in the road in construction, maybe you run into some archaeological finding and the project gets stopped, should you lose your funding for the whole project, even everything that's already done. So that's more of a policy question. And the future construction funding. One of the things we talked about with the funding we lost, the construction funding, was we reapplied in the TIP process to try and get the funding back. Our understanding is it won't make the first round, the first cut, therefore it would go into the second round. One of the ideas that was thrown out was perhaps requesting funding off the top in the second round, that this project could receive a high priority in the second round for selection with the funding that was already allocated and not thrown into the pool of the second round. It wouldn't affect the selection process for the other projects that are already submitted. So with that, wrapping it up, we just, like I said, love to see what help we could get on this. We don't think it's in anybody's best interest to just stop the project in its tracks, especially from a public safety standpoint. It's shovel ready and ready to go, and yeah, we just appreciate you having us tonight and letting us speak to this, and be happy to answer any questions.
May I ask a question? I'm sorry. Why was the delay? What happened? I guess that's my question, and I don't know if the rest of you understand what happened, that the project wasn't able to meet the schedule that was originally submitted. Right. Yeah, there was an October 1st deadline that we had to meet. Basically, we had to have all the clearances received from CDOT. There's several. There's right-of-way, environmental, and so forth. We hit some snags during the process, but by all rights, we feel we should have hit the deadline. In hindsight, it's easy to look back and say, well, we could have done this or should have done that. There were some things that happened unexpectedly, especially in the right-of-way acquisition. There were a couple property owners that died, and we had to go through probate, and maybe Mark can highlight. I have an understanding. But I'm not here to give excuses. No, and I appreciate you letting us understand that. I just wanted to make sure that I understood and didn't know if any of the other board members had an understanding of what happened to create the delay. At this point, I think we're going to ask staff to brief the board on what our policy is, why we have it, and with that, I'm going to ask Doug Rex to speak to that before we take questions, but I do expect that there'll be questions.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I mean, this is interesting for us because, we're certainly supportive of the project. I'm just going to pull up something here real quick as I'm talking to you. You know, we're certainly supportive of the project. It's one of those deals when we first found out, it's like, you know, it's one of your children, right? I mean, one of our projects that, you know, not going to reach that full potential they always thought it was going to reach. And so, you know, we were certainly disappointed when we heard the news. But, you know, I do want to provide a little bit of context to you all about what exactly the board policy is, why it was implemented at the time. Let me start with that. Primarily, we had some issues in the past about spending money. The projects were not getting done in a timely fashion, and actually we go through a federal certification review every 4 years of our metropolitan planning process, and at that time, I think, was it the last time or the time before? A couple cycles ago, probably. Federal FHWA in particular, they raised this as a recommended change to develop a process that holds communities to the fire with regards to spending money. So we brought that back to you all and developed a policy. And the policy is really kind of a one-strike policy. The first year, if you're delayed, like in this case, the project was supposed to go to add by September 30 of 2013. And it wasn't able to do that, and there was a plan put in place to try to get this project back on schedule and the like. And you know, there are mitigating factors as to why it is, and you know, some were outside the control certainly of Wheat Ridge. But then if the project does not go to add, then the following year, by September 30 of 2014, then the board policy of the removal of funds kicks in. And what I might do, because it's just easier, is just to read to you, quite frankly, what exactly this is. I don't know. How do I get this off here? Anyway, I don't know if you can. Tools. There we go. Okay, great. And basically, what's in yellow refers to the actual removal. So if in the following year, which we're currently in, the sponsor fails to achieve completion of a particular phase or the entire project that encountered the one-year delay, or has breached the one-year delay board conditions, the project will automatically be deleted from the TIP, and the sponsor is required to reimburse all federal funds expended on the project. This action cannot be appealed to the DRCOG board. The reason I read that to you is if you do agree, if you do decide to side with the Wheat Ridge request, it will require an amendment to the board policy, or at least a recognition of a variance to the board policy. So I'll just leave it there and ask if there are any questions of staff on this.
Mayor Cernanek.
Thank you, Chair. Rex, when it's deleted from the TIP, what happens with the dollars?
The dollars will, as I believe Scott had mentioned, the money will ultimately be returned back to us, and it will probably reemerge in 2016, which is the first year of our new TIP.
So if I'm going to try and make sure I understand this, so the money comes to the DRCOG pool.
Correct.
Okay, and so it moves into, and it does not otherwise diminish what would be in the 2016 to 2021 pool. It's actually additional dollars.
Correct.
From a federal perspective that will be in that pool.
Correct.
And there's no risk with regard that number somehow being diminished or what because of that transfer.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
So Doug, at Jeff Tag, we had it. Let's put aside the Wheat Ridge concern right now and sanitize this discussion. When we at our Jeff Tag, which is our transportation advisory group for Jefferson County, we had a presentation sponsored by one of the state representatives in regards to issues with workforce right now and delays in work. And in light of I-70 could happen, increase of concrete, lack of labor, trade availability. There was a discussion at that board in regards to keep costs down. Projects are asked to have a flex start and a flex date, completion date. You know, for us, if we miss the date, we lose the money. but then I have to pay high dollars to stay on schedule because I got to find the resources to support the project. How I know this? I have a transit hub being built in my city, and it's causing a lot of problems about getting workforce because all of them are on the Gold Line or on the RTD projects. So this brings up a good policy question, because in light of the situations now that we experience with building city buildings, building roads, we're going to have a problem with delayed projects that's way outside of any of our control. We'll all try to hit the date. I do like one of the proposals up there that says maybe they lose the funds of the phase that's not completed. I think that was one of the proposals up there. Just to hold some accountability to complete the tasks, but maybe on the delayed phases you lose it. We do need to wrestle with this topic because it's going to impact us all. I think we're just at the cusp of it right now. So just one last comment, and then I'll wrap it up. In regards to this particular project, Arvada would be interested in supporting the request here because of we have Red Rocks, who's expanding over $20 million in their expansion of their nursing school in the campus just on Kipling and I guess that would be, I don't know, 54th-ish. And so this is a good transit connection to that school, as well as it's a traffic jam. Wheat Ridge has a lot of traffic jams. So if we can get people out of cars and walking or riding bikes, Arvada will be behind it. So just some thoughts about that area.
Sue.
So I think this is a bit of a conundrum because we certainly want to have a policy in place that says you can't just get funding and then not use it, not use it, not use it, on the one hand. On the other hand, if you miss a date by 15 days or something like that, it's expensive to stop everything that's been done, put all the money back into the TIP program. Even if we award it then, it's 2 years away. We're costing ourselves a lot of money. And I don't know what the policy answer should be. I mean, the common sense answer to me is if it's shovel ready and ready to move forward within some leeway of the date for reasons like what Bob suggested, or maybe we go into some sort of flex period, but everybody's losing money if we do something like this where the project is now ready to move forward within less than 30 days of the original date, and we just stop everything and put the money back and then talk about reallocating it. So
Can I just, I'm sorry, it's only 15 days? I thought it was a year.
No.
It's okay, so
But yeah, I mean, yeah.
So it was, okay, I just want to make sure I understood that. It was a year delayed. It was a year delayed, and now.
Right.
And can we just get confirmation from Wheat Ridge that it is shovel ready today? That so if.
Sorry, I knew that. The only thing we have left to do is to send the 1180 form to CDOT, and it goes through 1 week at HQ and 2 weeks at FHWA, and if that all goes through, which it should, there's no reason that should be delayed, then we can go out to bid at that point. So we're 3 weeks away from being able to actually go out to bid just because they can't take it through the CDOT HQ and through FHWA unless we've got our funding in place.
Okay.
So that's the only thing left. We've got all the other CDOT.
I just want to make sure everyone's operating from the same set of facts.
Yeah.
So that was
3 weeks
my.
from whenever we have funding assured, we can go out to bid. So we're literally ready to go.
Okay.
And so the other thing is I think this used to be a 3-year process versus the 1 year before we made this modification. And so when we cut it back to the 1 year, which is probably a good idea because 3 years you're kind of saying, really? Why can't you get it started? But we didn't allow any additional leeway. So that was a pretty major change that we may start seeing impacts to apparently that won't be good for anyone.
And if I could just take the prerogative of the chair, I think Bob made a good comment at the beginning of this. Do we want to sanitize this and talk about this board policy and have the policy discussion, and then just something to keep in mind instead of speaking specifically about this project, which I just did. I apologize. So are there thoughts on that? Roger.
No, and there are certainly extenuating circumstances. We, probably all of us hear those from applications come in. First of all, question, is there a process for an extension? Do we have a process for an extension? And if we don't, has that been because of our policy that we have or haven't set, or is it because of the feds? I think it's kind of interesting if you do have extenuating circumstances, maybe held up for federal regulations, and we don't have an extension policy. Be kind of unique, but is there a policy, or is it bound by federal regulations? Or?
Well, it is not bound by federal regulations. We're bound, if anything, by our board policy. And quite frankly, this is the first time we've had a project where the funding's been removed. So we're cracking new ground here with regards to what's next. I think, given the permission of the board, if that is the direction they would like to go with regards to reevaluating the board policy, or amending or allowing some variance for this project, I don't. From our perspective, it wouldn't be an issue. The extension, it's a non-issue because, like was mentioned, the project is ready to go. I know Danny Herman's in the back room and Deb's here too, and I think they feel comfortable where the project is and its ability to move forward quickly.
Okay, I'm going to go in order which I saw. I saw Bill, then I saw Eva and Chrissy and Doug. So Bill, did I forget anything? Oh, and I'm sorry, Deborah. I did.
Madam Chair, I have many years of experience within the federal bureaucracy, and understand that anything can be done if it's so desired. And I would be supportive of as long as it's not in violation of any federal statute or any state-specific statute, I don't have a problem with taking a sympathetic view to this issue. I know that a lot of times projects that we jump into at the county level, unforeseen issues come forth, and I think it would be favorable for this for DRCOG to take a sympathetic view of helping this community out, because it has a broader impact on, as was pointed out earlier, on other communities. And I think the overall policy of encouraging multiple modes of transportation, which is another strong issue that we support here at DRCOG.
Thank you. I'm going to request if you're going to repeat comments already made, please say I'm in favor of whatever, and in the interest of keeping this moving. Eva.
I'm actually going to ask people to be very careful. This might be a slippery slope because if any community that comes forward with a story, and we all do, I believe Adams County missed a date when I first started, and we lost money. And we could have come forward and we could have been very sympathetic and brought out, the reasons why. So I think we need to be very careful with this. I think, yes, we need to take a look at the policy. I agree with that. But I think we need to be very careful because we're all friends here. We're all sitting here and we're all understand. But every time a community misses a date, does that give them, an opportunity to come forward and plead on the relationships that they have with all of us sitting here? So I think we really need to be very careful in regards to doing something like this.
Mayor Tisdale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question and then a statement relative to the policy. My question is, and I think that perhaps Doug Rex can answer it, was the sponsor's failure here to achieve completion, or was there a breach of any board-imposed conditions for the one-year delay?
It was the former.
It was the former. It was not. Yeah. So we didn't set up a condition, and they violated the condition. It is simply the timing issue, and we are a year beyond. But that's what the policy calls for: is 1 year, and we're 15 days or so. Add 3 weeks for the highway department and others to come up. The policy issue is to rise above just the specifics of this one, is to look at the language in the policy that we drafted. And I remember the discussion about this and going to the 1 year. I honestly don't recall, not to say it didn't happen, my memory fails me quite often, but I don't recall the language about the action cannot be appealed to the DRCOG board, because I have a strong resistance to anything that says that a document makes a decision and it cannot be appealed to the highest authority available.
Well, Doug, if I could interrupt you there, just because I do remember the discussion, and that is exactly what we did because of the very issues that Eva raised. Because at this point, everyone was coming and asking for, and everyone has a good reason. So we did do that. It doesn't mean we can't undo it, and we did it for the very reason that we didn't want to be put as a board in this circumstances when we had one of the communities that we love.
And that may well be, and as I said, I gave the disclaimer first.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to correct it for the information of people who weren't here then.
Yeah, and I believe that the argument, as has been stated, look, we are all friends here, and it is an embarrassing situation. I mean, I like Joyce a lot, so I don't want to see something happen that makes Joyce get upset about this. But I am not totally sanguine with the approach of it cannot be appealed, because I think there is legitimacy to this body doing that, and obviously the body is also not afraid to express themselves when we have concerns. That said, I don't know that we have a specific proposal yet presented, and I'm anticipating at some point someone will make a motion, but I do want to emphasize as I read the policy, it wasn't that we imposed specific conditions and those were breached, which would give me a different view toward the case, but rather, again, one of those timing issues. And I agree with Sue Horn's comment, too, relative to it used to be 3 years, and that gave us some leeway, but that seemed ridiculous. And did the pendulum perhaps swing back a little too far?
Okay, thank you, Doug. Chrissy.
Thanks, and I think I'd like to echo that a lot of the comments that have already been made tonight I agree with. As someone who's had the opportunity and privilege to work with DRCOG and on the receiving end and know how challenging these projects can be, just getting IGAs alone can take months. And when you're doing these projects, particularly in urban areas like the one that we were just talking about, you do run into a lot of issues that are unforeseeable. So I think, and I sat on the TAC when this was going through, so the change from 3 years to 1 year was something for those of us that are implementing projects were really taken aback by. While we understood the need and the desire to implement projects and make sure the money is being spent and not just sitting there, and, with the guidance from the DOT, I think that you've got to find that balance. And so what you're saying, Mayor Tisdale, in terms of this action not being able to be appealed or have some sort of variance for when you are consistently making progress, but you don't quite hit it, but you're really close, is there some way to sort of encourage us to keep going? But I do think that we need to deal with the policy side of things and not the specifics of this project.
Thank you, Chrissy. Deborah.
So I think Mayor Tisdale brought up a lot of good points, so I'm not, and I support those. I do want to address one other point that I'd like the board to consider, and that is, the term that says reimburse all federal funds expended on the project. If you have a project that has been delayed and it's kind of withering on the vine, I'd say I'd like that wording. But in the case where they've made a good faith effort and, delay by 15 days, I don't think that was the intent probably of the board in the original wording. So I just ask you to consider that, and CDOT would certainly support that. We do want to see money spent as quickly as possible, so we were glad that the board did take action based on the pre-certification and looked at a more stringent policy. So we do support the policy.
And could I ask a question also? I understand, if I understood correctly, they resubmitted this project for the current TIP and used one of their potential project slots for this project.
Correct.
But if I also understand, they're not going to, if it was awarded during this phase, they wouldn't see the money in time. I mean, can you just talk to us about the timing of that?
Right. Yeah, I mean, if they are ultimately selected in first or second phase, they would not see that money or would not be able to begin their project or start it up again until a period of time till that money is available, of course, because it'll be 2016 money. So really, I mean, we're looking at probably the fall of 2015 before they would be able to get going.
Money. So this is obviously a worthwhile project. It was awarded money. And to the points that have been made this evening, there has been progress made on the project, and we're working towards a goal. But in keeping with we don't want to go back to the 3-year delay, I'm wondering if staff could come up with something for the board to consider at their December meeting. And I do like the idea of them having to resubmit and lose this as an opportunity for a future project. I do think that's a bit of a penalty for the community that's doing it. But I'd wonder, there is a distinction between a project withering on the vine and a project and I do feel from the sense of the discussion, that's how most of us feel at the table. Can you guys take a shot at some language that would distinguish between people that are just not doing their job? And if you can't, please tell us that, and the board may have to wrestle a little bit. But if it's something you think you could do, I think the board would be interested in vetting that. Kathy?
So perhaps it is a sort of a percentage, so that you're moving, so that progress is moving, and you know, there's thresholds. You know, you get another X time if you get to this threshold, if you get to that threshold. So perhaps it's sort of a progress check and connected to something like that.
Yeah, very good.
And Joyce, I'm going to call on people who I haven't heard from. I'm not ignoring people.
Okay.
Oh, Saoirse, I didn't see you. I'm sorry. So I'm going to go with Joyce and then Saoirse.
Well, I wrote down just a notation. I said to myself, can we vote to suspend the DRCOG board policy tonight and then allow staff to come back to the board later with some rewording of the current board policy?
Okay. Just so they can move forward. And okay, Saoirse, did you have some? And then
yeah, just a very small point is just that I mean, this is a project that it isn't just about whether we like Joyce or we are friends with Wheat Ridge, but this is a project that impacts the region and in various ways. So I think that's important to consider.
And maybe part of the criteria. Robin.
So having been experienced with us sending things back to staff and them listening to video and audio trying to figure out what we meant, wanted to offer a refinement or detail to your proposal, because that is, I totally support the direction, which is that I think that the revision that I would like to see come back would have two pieces, which is one, it does not require repayment of federal funds already spent in good faith, per what Deb said. And secondly, has a either longer time period or has a mechanism for appeal for, you know, delay with good cause, perhaps without a time limit, or, you know, if the feds require a time limit, maybe that time limit is 2 years instead of 1. But that's, so I just want to clarify, I think we have two pieces that need adjusting, and I'm sympathetic to the idea of suspending the rules tonight, but I think that the region would probably be better off if we had the debate on the policy and then applied it to the project. And so I appreciate that, and I, you know, would want, my heart wants to go there, but so anyway, I could make this as a motion since it's very specific, and then have a second.
I think we would welcome a motion.
Yeah, so I move that the staff come back with two components. One is not requiring repayment for funds that were expended in good faith, and secondly, either an extension of the time period for good cause. You know, milestones are absolutely fine, but that we have two separate pieces you're bringing back to us by December.
And could I just clarify, do the feds require, before I ask for a second, do the feds require repayment, or is that something COG required?
That's part of our policy. No,
That's
it's not required.
okay, good. Just want to make sure of that. Is there a second for Robin's motion? Okay. Any other further discussion? Sue?
Just a comment, and I don't know if this would need to be a friendly amendment or if we could just incorporate it, but as we look at those changes, I think it would be helpful, to Commissioner Henry's point, to have some criteria on which we would base the decision. So, for example, I think I've heard everybody here verbalize there's a difference between something that's withering on the vine and something that's an active project, but there are ways to measure that. So it doesn't have to be you've complete. It could be percentages, as Mayor Noon suggested, or it could be things like there's been ongoing progress and dates, you know, things that need to be submitted to to ensure that, like dates of actions, even if you don't get results. So if someone dies and you have to petition the court, you can submit.
Yes, you do.
You could submit those things. So just a thought on the things that come back. I think that's a tack to take, and then we'll be less subjective if other things come before the board.
Is there any other? I think Commissioner Partridge.
Imagining this may not be the only MPO that's had a deadline missed on a funding project, maybe just suggest staff that they can certainly consult with other state MPOs or any other relationships that you have nationwide with MPOs.
Yep, thank you.
And Ashley?
I have a question, and perhaps this is out of order, and so I apologize, but I just wonder if the month delay, does that significantly impact the project at this point? Does that significantly delay it further? And I have a suggestion if, depending on what the answer is.
Could staff speak to that?
No, we can start at any time, and it really won't impact us. We'd like to get some irrigation work done before the ditches all start flowing, but that work's relatively minor, so we can work around that. That's why we were okay with starting in November, December, like we'd originally planned on doing. So I think the 1 month delay doesn't hurt us at all. A 1 year delay really hurts us. A 1 month doesn't hurt us.
And if I could also ask that because you guys are in the midst of dealing with this, maybe you could assist staff with some advice and input on the difference, how to define a project that's withering on the vine versus a project that's moving forward and progress is being made, but unforeseen circumstances. Chrissy?
I don't know if there's an opportunity between now and when we meet next, but if TAC is meeting, that might be a good place to do that, so you're getting input from all of the community.
From the rudder. And Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, TAC is meeting in between now and our next board meeting,
Yes.
So thank you, Chrissy. That's a great suggestion. And Mayor
Yes.
Sinanek? And
Yes, I want to echo what Chrissy and Sue had mentioned with regard going to TAC and determining what in good faith is and putting something along that. And part of the reason that the language is there that Eva has talked about in our slippery slope, it's not just a submission that would be taken up in lieu of this, but we might consider that this is pretty significant, and I'm not sure if there's a discretion element in it, but it might be in addition to not being able to resubmit or using it as a submission, it might be a further penalty beyond that with dealing with either future phases or future projects, because the reason this came from is folks basically, as Eva mentioned, kind of moving the slope and continuing the dates, and without some penalty that goes beyond just the normal or abnormal delay in a particular project, there almost needs to be a consequence that goes a little bit further than that. And asking TAC, consulting other MPOs, seeing what that might be would be of tremendous value. So it's more of a suggestion in how to do that, but my encouragement would be to have something more than just you resubmit it.
And I think there's a consequence, and the fact that they lost a TIP project, I think, is a starting point for the consequence. We've had a great discussion on this. I'm not trying to cut anybody off. I do want to let Mayor Jay speak before we take a vote on this motion, and after the mayor speaks, I am going to ask for a vote. So, Mayor.
Thank you for so much intelligent conversation. It's really, really valuable to me. And that the board really looks at this. You know, perhaps us setting an example is good as far as the policy making is concerned. I do want to say one of the incredible delays. We had a full year delay just out of the achieving the right of way. It was just unbelievable what we bumped into there. Further things down the line, it just seems like every portion of it had something went wrong, and the staff really did keep hammering away at it. So I appreciate so much your acknowledging that it was, where we're at with it, and hopefully that we will all get some value out of it for future projects that are multi, as this one is.
Thank you. Okay, with that, all those in favor of Councilmember Canisius' motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Okay. I think we did good work there, people. All right, now we are moving on. I think that was the last of the action items. We're going to move on to our briefing on the equity issue that, associated with the second phase of the TIP policy. Doug.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And before we begin, I'd like to just quickly echo the Chair's comments earlier about, some of the respect and admiration that other communities have for what we do here at DRCOG. I was also in Salt Lake City recently and for some day meetings with the Western Regional Alliance, and a lot of the examples that were used in those presentations were based on the work and the stuff that we're doing here within the DRCOG region. So gave me an opportunity to bow up a little bit, and I was proud of that, seeing I was the only person from Colorado there. And and it really has to do with, quite frankly, the conversation we just had and the one we're about to have with regards to our TIP policy. I think that engagement, that commitment that you all have to this region is certainly paramount. And thank you very much for allowing me to be a king for a day in Salt Lake City for all that you do. All righty. So
and what is Rex in Latin?
Thank you very much. I didn't want to say it. I'm a little blue blood, I know. So TIP policy, I appreciate the opportunity to present this today. I know we pulled it off the action, but I hope we do have a legitimate and good conversation about this. And what I hope to accomplish is just give you a briefing on what the MVIC's recommendations have been with regards to second phase, and also get from you if there's any additional information that you would like us as staff to provide to you so that we can get some action next month and put this thing to bed. So here we go. So you'll recall back in July, the board acted on approving our TIP policy document, which is and is going to be used to select projects for the 2016 through 21 TIP. Now, actually, we only select projects for the first 4 years of that, 2016 to 2019. So just kind of FYI. But we also told you during your deliberations then that there was no information in there with regards to second phase, that we would come back at a later time and present that to you. So here we are. And MVIC has been busy working on these recommendations since August, and so we're looking forward to the discussion today. And this flow chart many of you have seen quite often, and this is our TIP process as it relates to just DRCOG funds. The blue boxes that you see are ones that are already contained within the TIP policy document that you approved in July, and it sets aside, or basically it provides a bunch of set-aside programs for various programs and the like that we have here at DRCOG that will be run over the next 4 years, and then another commitment section, which quite frankly basically has to do with the first 3 at least are related to fast tracks. And those were commitments that the board made as part of our TIP policy. And the I-70 East, the $25 million, which is available in this 2016 to 2021 TIP, and the board acted on that some time ago as well. So that gets us to the call for projects, and we open up a call during the summer and close that in September, and we have approximately $174 million available for that call. And the first phase project, and we're in the process now of putting the list of projects together in first phase. And if you recall, in first phase, 75% of the available money is programmed. And it's based on project type, and we set targets for each project type. So roadway capacity, roadway operations, reconstruction, bicycle ped, a couple of transit categories, and the like. So there's a bunch of different categories, and they compete within that project type for funding. The projects that are not selected in first phase then go to second phase. That's all the remaining projects are moved over to second phase, and there's approximately $43 million available for second phase. And the projects in second phase, they're not scored per se like they are in first phase. First phase, you remember that there's we have a fairly objective set of criteria that's used, and projects are ranked and scored. In second phase, the board, at the board's discretion, they use other factors or guiding principles, criteria to select projects, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. MVIC's recommendation are, there were seven...
Doug, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you could just expand a little bit on why in second phase, why the second phase pool was initially created by the DRCOG board for some of the newer members, so the genesis of why even have a second phase.
Right. I know there was discussion at one time, and there are those who are probably better to answer this than me, but my understanding is that the reason that it was introduced is because there were some equity issues. You know, there was some communities that were getting a bulk of the money, and I think there was an opportunity there that people saw that there was maybe a better opportunity in a fairness vein to spread that peanut butter maybe a little better than and make up for those inequity, the perceived inequities at least in first phase that.
And it wasn't just dollar inequities. I think it was an idea of we recognized the tip was not 100%, that in theory it's what we, you know, this scoring process should work, but in the acknowledgement that sometimes it didn't work and sometimes good projects slipped through and weren't funded, we set aside a separate pool of money to deal with equity, not just dollar equity, but equity to smaller communities, equity to projects that really passed the smell test but weren't scoring necessarily the way people wanted them to. That was the genesis. That's all I'm saying. Doesn't mean it has to stay that way, but that's why the second phase was created.
Very good. Better stated than I did. No, and there were 7 criteria that were suggested. This is, I think there was 3 last time that was suggested, so this is more. And I'm going to go through these one by one. But one of the things that the MVIC did that was different this time than last time is that what they decided to do was to kind of tier these and the reason they wanted to tier this is to put extra emphasis on the 2 that are in the top box in tier 1. So that extra emphasis would be applied during deliberations of MVIC and the board in coming up with second phase projects. So I'm just going to step through these real quick. Very small communities, and we have a definition for this, and we actually brought this to the board some time ago, back in February, March timeframe, about what that definition might be. And it's basically communities of less than $10 million in annual net sales tax. And this was in response to, actually I believe it was Chair Millay that brought this up originally, that that special consideration should be given to communities that basically have, quite frankly, have some cash flow issues with regards to being able to fund larger projects. So they, and in those small communities, you know, the criteria is set up and such that sometimes it's difficult to compete with, you know, with those larger projects. So these, and the communities that would fall within that very small communities category are listed on your screen. I'm going to come back to the county funding equity, if you just indulge me for a minute, because I know there's going to be comments and discussion on this, so I'll just bypass that right now. Another criteria was TIP score. So basically, the TIP score is the final score for all your projects that were submitted, and will be provided to the board so you have that at your convenience. Multi-jurisdictional projects, these are projects that cross geographic boundaries. So you might have a project, for example, that crosses a geographical boundary of Centennial and Lone Tree, for example. But also part of that, we will also provide information to you all if they were funding partners in that application request. Another one is projects not eligible in first phase. There are 2 project categories that were not eligible in first phase. Quite frankly, they're just very difficult, if not impossible, to score, and those were studies and other enhancement projects. The MVIC felt that those project categories should be given consideration, seeing they were really not really eligible in first phase. The next one is number of sponsor projects selected in first phase. And, you know, this was interesting because, you know, you might have a community which, you know, has been very successful in first phase, and that should certainly be noted. And likewise, those communities that haven't been successful in first phase should also be noted. But also with that is not only the number of projects that they were successful in getting or not, but the amount of dollars that were awarded to that community. So again, that information will all be provided to you. It's a very comprehensive spreadsheet that you will be able to review and use during your deliberations. And last but certainly not least is first and last mile connections. Let me just catch up here real quick. Yeah, I was thinking about this actually today as I was putting this together, and I think about my commute. I live in Castle Pines. I drive to Lincoln Station, take the train, and get off at Broadway Station and get the 0L there and come all the way in. Well, that last mile, the 0L, if that wasn't there or available, I don't know if I'd make that commute, to be quite honest. Because quite frankly, I don't know how especially on a day like today, it was very unlikely that I would. And I mention that because the whole concept behind first and last mile is that if transit was maybe more convenient or more accessible, more people may take it. So what we're trying to do with this is provide information on the projects that are submitted that will be considered in second phase. Do they accomplish that? Do they accomplish and make transit more accessible? And we're talking about all different types of project types. We're talking about bike ped projects, standalone projects, but we're also talking about roadway projects that have that bike ped element to those that provide that first and last mile, like the standalone projects do. So, and staff will be making that determination and providing that information to you. And certainly not last is shuttle service, for example. There are some projects that provide a circulator type from a transit station, for example, to a final destination. And I also point out maybe on the first last mile that the projects must also connect to something, right? I mean, they're and again, we have a pretty good grasp and understanding of that, and we'll be sure to apply and make sure that we're consistent with how we're applying that connection criterion. All righty, I'm going to go back real quick here to county funding equity status and ratio. I would say out of all the criteria that we discussed, and there was many more that we discussed at MVIC, I think most would agree, that this was probably the one that we had the most discussion about, even up to until our meeting last Wednesday. And it is because it's kind of a different animal in a lot of respect. It's kind of we're trying to create kind of a proxy for your return on investment. How much money your community receives or your county receives as a result of certain what we call contributions or your makeup of your community, let's say. And we understand, this is certainly not the business sense of what ROI is. It's certainly more abstract than that on the contribution side in particular. But we felt, at least it provides, some information that for you to at least banter about and make a decision on. So on the expenditure side, what the MVIC recommendation is to use DRCOG funds that were from 2008 through 2019. So it's broken into three categories. So historically, 2008 through 2011, monies that has been sent out and appropriated to you all. We have record of those. What is currently programmed in the current TIP, 2012 through 2015, and what will be programmed in first phase of the new TIP. And that's an important one because the chart I'm going to show you does not include that information because, quite frankly, we don't know yet, of course, because those projects in first phase have not been selected. On the contribution side, what we try to accomplish with this is basically what we feel it's fairly comprehensive in nature in that, based on the contributions, we know where people live within your county, or we know where do people live in the counties. We know where people work. We know how people move about, at least from a vehicular standpoint. And we also have some understanding about how much the county provides or has available for transportation investment. I think ideally we really want this disbursement back out to the counties is not the number we specifically wanted. We wanted to know how much you all pay into the Highway Trust Fund, but quite frankly, that information is just not available. It's not collected that way. So, as a proxy, the disbursement back to you all is, we felt it was, a pretty good number, and I believe, the discussion we had at MVIC, I think most did as well. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's something. So with that said, based on all this information, we have today, and I will hand, excuse me. I know that's very difficult to see. I have a copy of this. Yeah, no doubt. I have copies of this for you all. And yeah, and again, I really want to state, I can't state enough, that these tables are very preliminary. As far as the numbers that are, the cells that are populated, we feel pretty good about those. We've checked and double-checked those numbers. But you'll see that there's question marks in the DRCOG selected first phase. So ultimately, this will change the outcome of the equity formula. And probably the most important row and the information that ultimately will be included in that comprehensive spreadsheet that we give you for second phase is the bottom row. It is what is deemed to be over or under equity. And the way that's calculated, over equity is anything that is 110% and above. Below equity or under equity is 90% and below. And even is that 10% in the middle, from 100, basically from 110 or 100, I guess 109 to 91. It would be deemed as even.
And if I could ask a clarifying question right there. It doesn't matter your percentage over and under. Historically, it has just mattered whether you're over or under or even.
Correct.
If you're 300% over or 80% under,
correct,
that has not played in. It's just the over-under, like Vegas. And we have another question. Suzanne.
Well, my understanding, I wasn't at MVIC, is that one of the big discussions is whether to just look at DRCOG funding, or I believe the staff recommendation was to look at DRCOG, CDOT, and RTD.
Right.
Can you talk about that and why the staff recommended one versus the other? Like, spell that issue out for all of us.
I think that's a great point. There's been three, and just so everyone knows, there's been 3 MVIC meetings talking about this, which we've agreed we're not having another MVIC meeting about this. We're going to have the full board make this discussion. And there's been different recommendations at each of those MVIC meetings, which is why it's being brought to you guys tonight as a discussion item, because we really do want thoughtful consideration on this so we can actually make a decision next time. So Doug, if you can remember way back to August when you first presented this to us, if you want to give us what you initially presented, what you recommended, the basis of the recommendation, the action that MVIC took at that meeting, the subsequent discussion, the subsequent action, the subsequent discussion, and the subsequent action. I mean, if we're going to have the full breadth of it, or do you want to just explain the facts to the group as they are today and let us make the choice? Right. I mean, the MVIC discussions to me, while valuable, are confusing.
Okay, well, since I made the request, I don't want to know the full. I want to know why staff recommended the bucket of 3 versus this approach and the pros and cons. So give us your professional expertise so we can learn from that.
Right. Yeah, I don't. The pros and cons, I'm not sure how to answer that because I don't think there's a perfect answer, to be honest. I will say though that.
Well, or the implications then.
Sure. That staff's recommendation it was to include 3 pots: the DRCOG, CDOT, and RTD investment within our community, right? And the reason for that was one. There was really 3 reasons. There was one. Traditionally, that's what we've always used for as long as we've used the equity formula, which is a couple 3 tip cycles. Yeah, 12 years or so that we've used the equity formula. 2, it was, in our opinion, that was a better representation of regional investment. And three, golly, I wish I could remember the words that Robin used to describe this, but it really helped. The one equity, our recommendation that included all three, there was on the contribution side, we included another factor, which was RTD sales tax, that we felt provided a more balanced playing field than what it had in the past. Because in the past, it seemed like we had RTD investment on the expenditure side, but we had nothing to offset it on the contribution side. And we felt that there was a better feel or balance as a result of that. So that was it. I don't know if I can speak to, I think memory, if it serves me correctly, I think a lot of discussion about DRCOG only had to do with the fact that, we're dealing and we're talking about DRCOG monies, then maybe we should be looking at how much DRCOG monies those communities have gotten through the years.
Excuse me, Elise.
I don't know that it was your intention to have this discussion tonight. I'm assuming it wasn't, but to have it at the December board meeting when we're making decisions. To that end, I do think that there's validity in having this discussion at the December board meeting, and I would like to request that staff provide this chart with the version that includes all three pots of money and the RTD sales tax as well, so that everybody can be adequately informed for that discussion.
And I'm going to even interject, and also, I'd also like to request a chart be developed that shows the over and under each of the different categories that we choose. So those of us who have had the pleasure of being at the MVIC meetings have seen, all I care about is the over and under, and let's see how much we're debating this issue, and quite honestly, what difference it really makes, whether we include it, don't include it, what we include. So can you just show us a chart that shows the bottom line for each of the potential scenarios as well?
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then Kathy, thank you.
And if I remember correctly, the original staff recommendation was also to do 2003 to 2019. So
correct.
Yes.
That's also, this would be a change that was discussed, that if we're going to look at everything, we probably need all of that in both versions.
Yes.
so that everyone gets to look at everything that MVIC got to look at, if
Yes,
we're going
indeed.
to open the whole discussion.
Okay, Eva, and then I'm going to go to Robin. And did I miss someone?
I just have a real simple request, and that is that we get the chart before the
Absolutely.
meeting, so we have time to digest the information.
And-
Getting
and-
it at the meeting does
Right.
not help us at
So,
all.
and if I just want to speak to that for a minute as well, as I think I indicated, we've been going round and round with this at MVIC, and at every MVIC meeting we've been asking for a different thing from staff, which they have then brought to us, and then we've changed it again. This meeting this month, you guys, is being held a week earlier because of National League of Cities. Staff was also in the process of reviewing tips. So this really is the board has created this scenario today, and it's one of the reasons that we decided to pull it, because it was only available today, that we're not going to take action on it. But I do want to just stand up for staff a little bit. This is DRCOG board members that created this today. It was not lack of staff responsiveness. But with the complete understanding that this board has said a number of times, we don't want to make a decision with information presented to us today on the day we make the decision by staff.
Can we clarify, the charts that we're seeing tonight will also not be the final charts, because the phase one tip allocations will be made prior to our December meeting. So you can hang on. Is it potentially?
Well, I'm going to hope they have been, but I'm going to give it a potential.
So don't memorize what's on the sheet, because it too will change.
Potentially, yes. So, and I'm sorry, Robin was trying to say something, and then I think Doug.
Thanks. I was just going to caution about all the charts, because really what we should have is a policy rationale for how we measure equity. And if everyone is literally studying the chart for how they do and how they don't do, I just want to urge us to stay in the realm of what's a rational formula. And there are valid arguments on both sides. I want to just share one of those valid arguments with related to the number of years. DRCOG has had a practice of going back a couple tip cycles each time. We couldn't quite determine what the rationale was for not, usually they shift up, so right, like this time we go back 2 cycles, and then in the next cycle we go back 2 cycles. For whatever reason, they kept an extra cycle in this time. We couldn't determine, and you should correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, that the staff made any intentional recommendation to us that we should look back 4 cycles instead of 3. And so when Chris, noticed this, it was kind of the first discussion that the board had about what the year should be. So I know someone said, oh, well, let's go and show the chart of what it looks like if it's from 2003 to the present instead of 2008. I just want to make sure folks really want to do that. I mean, Chris's suggestion was this thing just kind of technically never got changed, and it was never a decision that anyone made. Obviously, every single decision you make is going to impact the chart, and if we're driven by the charts, it's going to be a messy conversation. So do we really want to have 9 choices? Because
No.
I think we want to narrow, and so my suggestion would be that we look at the substantive issue of the 3 funding sources versus the 1, and we just go ahead and in our good judgment say, we often look back 2 or 3 cycles. Let's not start gaming. Let's look back 4 cycles now. I do better, I do worse if we look back 4 cycles.
So,
there's no rationale for it.
Robin, I actually am going to make a suggestion then that we don't show any numbers and we don't show any overs and unders, and that we actually just show how do you want to calculate this. I mean, I think your points are well made. I think the issue should be based on substance. It shouldn't be based on whether Douglas County is going to do better or not. So we ask for the factors and how the math works out. The math works out. I mean, are we going to go crazy and live like that? And I'd like to indulge myself as chair and just say, are we comfortable making a fact-based decision without putting numbers in a chart? And if you are, raise your hand. It's just based on we're going to figure out how to calculate a number. Okay, I don't have consensus for that. Do I have consensus or not for that? Who doesn't want to do that? Who?
What's the question, Jackie?
The question is, we're not going to put numbers in. We're going to put what we're going to consider above the line and what we're going to consider below the line, and the factors that will be. So should we include all 3 funding pots or just DRCOG? That's our choice. Should we go back 3 tip cycles or should we go back 2 tip cycles? So the numbers are not going to be there for us. We're going to make the decision based on inputs and outputs, not numbers.
Well,
then we aren't missing information.
Well, except at this point, you guys weren't. I'm not going to decide it tonight. But all right, Doug was up there for a while, Bob, Bill, and then Phil.
And I think, Robin, you make an excellent point, and I applaud that, and I would love to have the process done just based upon a consideration of the factors. The reality is I fear that, and it's not a judgmental comment, that there are member jurisdictions who will be hounded by their staffs to have that information. I would encourage it for one reason only. I agree with Jackie that the bottom line is going to be, no matter how many different versions of this chart you run, and I say that because we have some inside information, we've seen some of this already, you're going to end up with the same over-unders. So to the extent that people are saying, well, am I going to do better this way or that way, I think what you're going to find is that you are unaffected by a lot of these decisions. But as a man named Thomas needed to put his fingers in the wounds, we all need to have some kind of confirmation to have our staff, if nothing else, feel comfortable that, yes, by golly, it does work out that way. So it serves a useful purpose, if only to that extent. I believe that the chair is right, you're going to find the same result no matter how you slice these. Then we can get back to Robin's bottom line question, which is a legitimate one of, can we just say what are the factors then? And let's just deal with the policy. And I think that's where we should end up.
Okay, in interest of time, thank you very much, Doug. I'm going to quickly go to Bob, Phil, and Bill. This is an informational item. I'm going to ask if there's anything else we want to see when we are going to be making this decision next month. We communicate that to staff, and then we're going to move on. Okay, so Bob?
Yeah, so real quick on clarification from the MVIC meeting, I believe we all agreed on that it was a 12-year rolling previous. So, you know, you're talking about cycles, but I think we all agreed. It was years. It wasn't cycles. We agreed at 12 years.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's correct. Exactly, and that's where I wanted to clarify is I don't think there's two issues. There's one issue. I don't want us to revisit the 12-year historical data discussion. We did years. We didn't do cycles because we had a mini tip cycle in there, and that caused a lengthy conversation of a mini tip cycle. So the idea was 12 years. So I don't know if we want to reopen another wound and kind of rehash it.
But let's make clear that it's 12 years in the next.
Some are back and some are front.
12 past years, and then one current.
8
Was it?
current. 4 current.
Because I think we all agreed that would go to 2002 or 3. But right now the data. Go ahead, Doug. I know you're chomping over there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Connie's right. But what we decided, you're exactly right. We decided to go with years because it was very difficult to do with cycles because you could have mini cycles, you suggest, and whatever. So it's 8 plus 4 future years. The 4 future years that are in first phase. Yeah.
So 12 total.
So that gets us from 2008 to 2019 for this.
Okay, just want to clarify that so we don't revisit it.
All right, and we'll articulate that in the memo. Phil.
Okay. Very quickly, Bob's right to bring up that point because that's how the decision was made, is rather than have it from, say, inception. And you could make an argument that talks about inception is the perfect equity, but we said we wanted to actually stay a little bit closer to current.
Can we have that discussion later? In the interest of moving, we got 5 minutes technically till we're supposed to be out of here, and we have work to do.
But the other item was, what goes in the pool as far as expenditures that were considered, and the fact that we are the DRCOG board, we deal with DRCOG funds, and often there's other expenditures like CDOT that might go into the county that are taking care of interstates that are not as much our local roads, but would cause some confusion. And so if you want to bring up the years, we can, but I agree with Bob that that's probably something that MVIC, and if we wanted to come back, he should have sat there and all those discussions that we went through over the last 3 months. And if you want to talk about the pool, the logic around it is we allocate DRCOG funds, we know DRCOG funds, it's not confused with local projects versus state projects and that, and so.
And I do think that's a fair point. We settled on the dates at DRCOG and we settled on the pool at DRCOG. And if we're going to open one, I think we have to open them both. And if we're going to keep them both shut, we keep them both shut.
But that was the logic if anyone is looking at first
Right.
thought.
So Bill,
Well,
and then I'll go to.
I think Phil is absolutely right in his point. The issue, I think, is we're trying to look at some form of equity, and it's never going to be achieved. I mean, that's the bottom line. Nobody will ever be satisfied, and I think how you measure that is the conundrum we're in right now. We don't really know how to measure it until we come to a realization that is equity determined by the level of commitment that a county or a city gives to a specific project that has a regional impact? Is that how we measure it? I think it's a tough question.
Absolutely. Sue.
So I think there are any number of ways that we can measure it, and if we all want to see that, we certainly can do it. But to Mayor Tisdale's point, those numbers don't vary significantly whether you do just DRCOG or you do CDOT RTD and DRCOG, whether you do 8 years or 12 years. So I think the important thing, the key thing is that we're consistent, that we figure out what it is that we're going to use as the basis. I'm not sure how you do that without numbers, but we get to the over-under for this project. That's all we're talking about, and that we use the same measure every time, whatever we agree to. And then it's got to be fair.
Right. Okay, Kathy?
Are we having the discussion now?
No. Well, I understand, but I think we need everyone to feel they've been heard. So this is it. I said this is it, so Kathy's going and that's it.
Okay, my only question was, it's very comforting that the executive committee can tell us that it doesn't make a big difference, but the rest of us haven't seen that. So that's where we're coming from. So,
Right.
so it's very nice that it comes out that
yeah.
way, and I appreciate that, but I think that's just what everyone else
Needs that same comfort level.
needed
and,
that same
and that's
level.
what staff is going to show us
And then
at the next meeting.
my last comment about the years, and yes, I went along with it, but I would say that you're going to have projects that cross years.
And
so then, when does it go in, when does it come out? So that's the biggest issue with not just doing cumulative, is whether it's cycles or whether it's years, projects are not clean. They don't follow our calendar.
And to be fair, I want to have that discussion too, whether it should be cycles or years. And I understand MVIC made that decision, but I also know MVIC made the decision to just use DRCOG money. So if we're going to open it up, we're opening it up. So to be continued at the next meeting, please come prepared fully to discuss that. Yeah. So, all right, now I have to let you know that I'm very annoyed at all of you. So the results of the voting have left me in a position where I don't get to make a decision, and gosh, I was looking forward to making my 2 appointments, and I just don't get to do it because you guys took care of it for me. So the goal with the nominating committee is to have cities and counties represented and to have geographic representation and size of community representation. And unfortunately, the vote was so darn close, it's pretty pathetic. So I will let you know I'm going with the decision of this body in no particular order, but these were the top 4, and I will tell you it was ridiculously close. It's the mom and me. Everyone's a winner. But you guys really were, and it was really close, and just the separation, in fact, there were ties. So I'm going with the top 4. Gabe, Suzanne, Bob, and Chris Nevitt will be the nominating committee, in addition to Kathy and Roger. We have, just so everyone knows, 2 from the north, 2 from the south, 1 in the middle, cities and counties. And again, I couldn't tell you how close it was, but thanks for removing any ability for me to participate. No, I actually would have liked to have had a choice, but you know. But anyway, thank you guys for voting, and I think it goes to the regionalism of this body in general, that you guys kind of figure it out on your own, so good on you. And thank you to everyone who submitted their name, and I would really encourage them to continue to submit, because the way this organization is going, we have nominating committees every month. With that, I'm going to ask Rich to come forward and give us I think we've been through the action items. Yes, Rich, we're on to you, wherever you are.
Madam Chairman and members, I think that takes us to attachment H and the state legislative policy statement, and I also want to add in a few updates for you on other legislative issues. So this time every year, I bring forward state policy, legislative policy statement, and also subsequently federal legislative policy statement with recommendations for revisions and updates for you to act on for those. With the state, present it to you now, and we'll bring it back in December for action, so you have time to review it, have your staffs review it, and give us any suggestions for changes or whatever, or additions. I think if you look through it now, you don't see too much, and certainly not too much of real substance. But I will mention that the one suggested change that we will have when we send this out again that is more substantive has come from Mayor Horn. After this went out last week, she emailed me and asked if we could add there's a section a few pages in on water supply, that if we could add a statement supporting the development of a state water plan, which I'm sure you've all heard is in the process of being done. And so I've worked with, I came up with some language that I ran by my friends at CML and CCI that they think is pretty good that I will add in, and so I wanted to just put you on notice to look for that in the next iteration of this, and we'll bring it back to you in December for your action, and then in January we'll bring the federal policy statement to you. So unless there's any questions on that, I just wanted to mention a couple of things about the upcoming legislative session.
So just so I'm clear, Rich, the changes are all highlighted in red,
yes,
and the strikeouts are here.
Yeah.
This is what we will be acting on at the next meeting. Please review it with your staffs and make sure it works for you. If not, please come back with recommendations. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our information. Excuse me, Rich.
That's fine. I
Please go
assume
ahead.
everybody knows we just had an election, and we have a new state legislator. We already introduced Senator-elect coming. And but so I wanted to, and I think you know that we're going to have the Republicans in control of the Senate and the Democrats in control of the House, which will be a little bit different dynamic than we've had the last few years, but not a big deal from our perspective, certainly from my perspective, because I think DRCOG's issues are nonpartisan and bipartisan issues anyway. And with that, I wanted to mention a couple of aging-related issues that we've been working on and already have had some progress on. I just want to put you on notice and give you an opportunity to object if you see any red flags in what we've been doing. But the first one is very good news that I had worked with a number of, I'll say, aging advocates. And a lot of this stuff, those of you who are on the Aging Advisory Committee have heard a lot of these updates from me. We sent a letter, I produced a sign-on letter where we got 18 different organizations and individuals from around the state to sign on to a letter to the governor asking that he include a $4 million increase in state funding for senior services in his budget request. And that request was released November 1st, and he did in fact put that full $4 million in the budget request, and so we were very pleased to see that, and we'll be working with our other supporters during the session to make sure that that stays in the budget. So that we're very pleased about. The second issue that I wanted to call to your attention that I've been working on with a lot of other aging advocates again is to get sponsors for a bill, and we're working on that right now, to get sponsors for a bill that would create, I'll call it for the time being, a independent long-term aging strategic planning group under the idea, and if you remember presentations that you've heard from Jayla and from Brad on the boomer bond and the demographic shift that this region is seeing and the various other issues that our aging and planning staffs are seeing of the impacts of the aging population, a lot of us have felt like our system that's in place, not just at the state level, but also at the local level and in the private sector as well as the public sector, is still piecemeal in terms of understanding the impacts of this aging shift, demographic shift, and what we all need to be doing to prepare for that over the coming years. And so our idea is to have legislation to set up this blue ribbon panel, task force, whichever you want to call it, to study these issues and make recommendations for legislation, for best practices, et cetera, that can be implemented. And so I'll just stop by adding that we've already gotten resolutions of support for this idea from Club 20, from Action 22, and I was just notified today that Progressive 15 is going to take it up with their board on December 8th at their board retreat, and that their director is anticipating they won't have any problem supporting that. So we're really excited that this idea already is starting to build some support, because I think everybody around the state is seeing the impacts of aging in their communities.
I think something that I'll add on that, Rich, is just to mention one of the things that Jayla can certainly include in her report later is we've all seen, or many of us have seen, some proliferation of building of facilities, but the licensing and the need determination for those in our communities is somewhat mixed, possibly, but also the JALIS staff has seen relative levels of abuse, not consistently across facilities, but some facilities that are driven more by the financial opportunity necessarily, and forgetting a little bit about the service side of what they're involved in. And something like this, and taking a look at what is community-based, what's private-based, and where does that go? It's not just understanding, hey, we're going to have a few folks that are over 65 more than what we have right now.
Right. Thank you. And so I just wanted to finish by mentioning to you, or putting you on notice, that I'm going to be preparing another thing I do every time this year I call legislative acquaintance survey. So as soon as we get all the new names into that survey, we'll be sending out and asking all of you, and I think also your alternates, to let me know which, and this will be statewide officials, federal officials, as well as state legislature. Those who you know, and who you can talk to, and that kind of thing, to help me out as we go forward, especially on something like this task force. I may need some help from some of you to talk to state legislators and others on some of these issues. So
Yeah, Beth has 56 new friends.
that's right.
Okay.
And finally, can I just recognize our lobbying team in the back?
Absolutely.
I think George just stepped up and walked out, but for quite a while now, for a number of years now, DRCOG has contracted with Danny Tomlinson and Associates.
George heard his name and came back. I see
Yeah.
who you are.
And,
How much are you paying a
done-
pension on that phone?
They've done a really great job for us, and of course Danny's not here. Danny's the one who's not here tonight, but I did want to recognize George Dibble, who was standing up there talking on the phone, and Jennifer Castle sitting next to him, and Ed Bowditch as well. They do a great job for us down at the legislature.
Thank you, guys. Okay, before I forget, someone left a black coat in Monarch Pass at the admin committee meeting, and it's your coat. Okay, I think whoever it was would probably realize it when they walked outside. I'm going to go through with the informational briefings, but I'm going to say this now because I always forget. If we could please remember to bring our named plates out into the hallway, it would be a huge help. So having said that, I'll try and remind you all again. I'm going to go to committee reports, and Commissioner Jones on the stack.
The October 10th meeting was pretty light. I'll be quick. Stack's following up on its retreat by adopting some bylaw changes, changing how we run meetings. We're going to reschedule, starting in January, our meetings so that they happen after the Transportation Commission board meeting, so we have the maximum opportunity to influence them before they take action. Got an update on the statewide transportation plan. The needs and gap analysis that was done shows a revenue shortfall of about $20 billion, just in case you were wondering whether or not we're meeting our transportation needs. And that will be available to read on the web. We also got a legislative update, although I think a lot of that's in flux now, but the state legislative agenda on transportation is going to be relatively modest, tinkering with license plates and a few billboards, stuff like that. So nothing monumental from the legislative committees on transportation. Last but not least, Senate Bill 228 funding for transportation. Every estimate has it dropping further. But I think that there's still an attempt to put together a list of projects should there be transportation funding and it not be taken for other purposes. That's it.
Thank you. And Mayor Tisdale from the Metro Mayor's Caucus.
Thank you very much. Metro Mayor's had a full caucus meeting on October the 1st. Something tells me it was all happening at the zoo because that's where we had the meeting. The SCFD presented, important for all of us to take note. SCFD comes up for reauthorization in 2016, and they're working diligently now on getting prepared for the reauthorization vote. We did have an extended discussion about the tax increment financing, and Metro Mayor's Caucus is working with Metro Area County Commissioners to come up with a group that will meet and try to see if we can honor the governor's request to the two groups to come up with some discussion that will bring about an agreed upon bill. As you may know, CCI and CML are both running opposing bills as planned in the upcoming session. Also a discussion on owner-occupied attached housing, and there is again another bill on that will be coming forward in the legislature in the next session, and we're hopeful that there will be more receptivity to that. And then finally, the legislative reception that is jointly hosted by the MAC and the MMC will be on December the 10th at the Art Museum.
And one additional item was the presentation on what's happening with regard to the 25 city effort on homelessness, trying to coordinate some of the input rather than it being, as many of us have, scattered across a number of organizations, to actually have a coordinated input part so that folks can be dealt with more expeditiously, getting them to the resources that can help them, as well as being in a position to be more cognizant of those folks that might be shopping for the best location or the next location, and not necessarily covering the intended incentives, so it's the unintended consequences.
Thank you. The Metro Area County Commissioners, I do not see Commissioner Rogier here. Is there anything, Roger, you want to share from that group, or are you going to let us get out early?
I think Doug had mentioned some, Mayor Tisdale mentioned some things we talked about on the, in combination with Metro Mayors. And there's a little presentation regarding auditors, assessors, and treasurer regarding their bills that they're looking at.
Okay, thank you. Now we are on to Advisory Committee on Aging.
Okay, so the Older Americans Act requires all area agencies on aging in the country to do four-year planning, a four-year plan. We are starting that process now. So we will have a plan for 2015 through 19. The State Union on Aging was here to kind of tell us what their goals are for that. So the feds tell the state what they want, and then the state decides, okay, we'll take the feds and we're adding on some, and then we'll give it to the AAAs. They set some goals, and some of those goals are pretty lofty. What they want is for all AAAs to double the unduplicated client count. So to really serve a whole lot more people. They want us to increase the unserved and the underserved population. They want us to implement more evidence-based programs. They want us to focus on those most in need. They want us to develop comprehensive outcome measures. They want us to do performance. They're going to have a performance-based contract for us, so our contract with the State Union on Aging is going to be performance-based. We don't know what those performance measures will be, but if ours, because remember we contract with so many local service providers, so our success is largely dependent upon the success of our contractors. Anything that we get put on us, we will then implement and put in our contracts with our local service providers. So that is definitely going to be challenging. It was a little bit rough, I thought. I thought the meeting was a little bit rough. And the State Union on Aging said, you know, DRCOG's the largest AAA. We have over 50% of the population. The success of DRCOG is the success of the state. You must do this. And I have to tell you, I'm so grateful for the advocates in this room who kind of stood up to the state and said, wait a second. Are you saying that we're not being as effective and efficient as we could be? Are you saying, you know, and just kind of pushing back and challenging? I'll tell you afterwards that the state staff said, wow, you really have a very active and engaged advisory committee. And when I told them they were board members, they were even more surprised. So thank you so much, Phil in particular, for that strong advocacy. Phil was talking about assisted living. So, Brad and I have gone to many of your communities. We're just at Bennett last night talking about the aging of the population, and our goal is to really try and help people, local governments, you all our members, understand the aging of the population, its impacts, how it's unprecedented, and how that's going to affect. What do we need to do to prepare for that population? A lot of our local governments are, housing. We've all heard housing, right? It's a huge need. But a lot of communities are still thinking housing for elderly is nursing home and assisted living facilities. And I have been saying in all of our presentations, nursing homes and assisted living facilities should not be the only housing option for older adults. Please think of yourselves. Do you all want to live in one of those? Now, some are very nice, but they're also costing $7,000, $8,000 a month. And that's hard to sustain for very long. We had the opportunity to talk with a group of planners here at DRCOG and really talk with them about what happens when a developer comes to you, and then talk to them about what happens after that building is built. So what's happening in the region is lots of assisted living, over 330 facilities, assisted living facilities in the region. They're opening, they're beautiful, they open with great fanfare, lots of excitement, some press. A few people move in, and there's projections, and they're hoping that more people will move in, and then they don't move in as fast. And then they cut staff. And then the care declines, and the services decline, and then it gets the reputation that the care is not so great. So then we have empty buildings, and that's not so great. So we were trying to help the planners understand, and the health department sent a letter to us saying they're not going to be able to survey all of the assisted living facilities in the state. And my staff are having a trouble getting out to all of the assisted living facilities and resolving complaints. So I think many parts of the region are overbuilt. I think we need to have a discussion about that. And then there are other parts, like Bennett, that could really use one. So that was what we talked about.
Thank you, Jayla.
Yep.
Now we are moving on to the RAC. We met last Friday, it feels like years ago. They adopted the 2015 work plan. To tie it to us, they were very appreciative of the fact that DRCOG has set aside money that's actually going to the RAC, and they're going to spend it how they see fit versus us trying to decide how that's spent. The other thing is there are going to be changes to the car inspection maintenance program starting January 15th. Nothing significant, but go to the website and look at it. I'm not going to recite all the changes. But those are the big things that we probably care about at the DRCOG table. Ron, E470.
A couple quick things. A contract was signed with Ward Oil Company to do some drilling on the property, which will eventually, when it happens, will provide royalty payments, which will go towards paying off the bonds. And for those of you that are interested in water, the South Metro Wise Authority has approached the authority to install 2 new water tanks on E470 property near Smoky Hill. The tanks are 99 feet in diameter, 38 foot tall, and have a capacity of 2 million gallons each. And so this will help store water and balance pressure in that area. And there's also been some very significant and positive move on capturing rental car tags so that they all pay their fair share.
Thank you, Mayor. Bill Van Meter, can you give us a quick update on Fast Tracks?
Yeah, since we last met, our board met in October. Since the DRCOG board last met, the RTD board met in October and approved one action item that was for a budget amendment to add a little additional money on the North Metro project to add some additional sidings or double track, which will increase operational reliability. Much of the North Metro corridor is single track. This authorized a little extra double track, which will improve operational reliability. That was the only action in October. and November. Just last night, our Fast Tracks Monitoring Committee approved a series of 4
contracts or contract amendments for public information, quality support, materials inspection, and program support to contractors that are supporting the Fast Tracks program. Those are the actions that have been taken since the last time I reported.
Thank you very much. With that, please refer to the informational items in your packet, 14 and 15. Our next meeting is December 17th. Please remember 4 o'clock for our social hour before our meeting, which hopefully will make for a quick meeting. Oh, meeting first, sorry, I apologize. 4 o'clock meeting, which will make the after party much more fun. Yeah, we can do both. Feel free. Are there any other matters by members? Okay. Congratulations again to our Senator-elect, and we will see you all at 4 p.m. for a discussion on equity. And again, thank you for your participation tonight, and everyone please remove their name tags.